Announcement. Let me adjust this real quick. All right. What's cooking? How you guys doing? Good? All right? Not bad? All right. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Couple of quick announcements. The first one is this. July, as it turns out, big birthday month here at Beaches Vineyard. Today, actually, literally today is Betsy Hubert's birthday, our Wednesday receptionist and hostess extraordinaire, and many other, significantly more important roles than that. Just my narcissism leads me to name the thing she does at the church as the primary thing she's doing. I don't know what that is. I should probably look into that. It's Betsy's birthday. It's also last week, 2 weeks ago, was Josh Young's birthday. Don Sullivan had a birthday last week. I'll turn 40 on Friday, as will Nanette Van Doren, our bookkeeper. Kim Green, your birthday? Is this same as Nanette's? Who am I missing? Yeah? Oh, you too? Ryan? Well, happy birthday to us. On behalf of us, happy birthday to us. And that actually kind of works in terms of a transition, because I did want to give everybody a brief financial update. And I want to begin with, genuine gratitude. At this point, this has been said ad nauseum, but it's been, for the world, a strange few years here. We came through something that, our kids and their kids, if they're still keeping history textbooks then, if there's still an internet, will certainly look back on as an era and an event that really shifted the way that we function. This is the little coronavirus situation, and we still find ourselves asking questions like, what's the church, and what are office buildings for, and what about all these malls that sit half empty? The whole landscape is shifting and changing, and it's been long enough without reverting back to normal that even those of us who are really holding on to this idea of when will things go back to normal have finally sort of given up the ghost on that. And we get to face together what is honestly kind of exciting if we welcome it, which is what is this church, us specifically, but also more broadly, what are we becoming? It's certainly going to be something new, and that to me is, it's a little mixture of frightening, but also really, really exciting. And so, coming through COVID and then capping COVID off for our community, going through a leadership transition where the lead pastor steps back, which is always a very stabilizing experience for everybody. A little 1-2 punch of that, and here we are, and we're still here. And there is life and energy and grace and connection that I continue to sense, and I know many of you do too, because I get to talk to some of you. And something kind of beautiful that's been happening over the last couple of months, at least for me, is sort of the big idea here, the sense that we got stepping into this role, leading this thing, was we just need a space to be together. If we are going to continue, and if we are going to sense what the direction is for us, it's going to come from us. And it'll come from us as we have space to be with each other and to let our guard down and to listen to one another. And so, a lot of the shifts that have been made were made in that with that in mind. How do we make this place the kind of place that you don't want? It doesn't feel like you're moving through here, but you're coming here to stay for a while. And it's been really cool to hear people from about as diverse a set of backgrounds as you can imagine coming into the lobby and saying, this feels like home. I feel like I just got home. And so, expressing gratitude is a kind of a funny thing, because I wish I could say thank you, but it's not really thank you. It's more like thank us, because we're all just sort of in this situation, you guys just happen to be the ears and I'm the mouth, but we're here because we're here. And we're here because we're giving and because we desire to be here. And most of all, we're here because, obviously, there's something in store in the present moment and for us. And we're here because the Lord is here. And so thank us for being generous. And over the course of the last few months, we have been working pretty diligently to trim the budget down because things are a little tight. We're good. We're here. Margin's a little slim. And so as you do in times of slim margin, you just start shaving things down even when you thought maybe there was nothing left to shave. And so we have reduced as best we're able pretty much every line item in the budget, except for the one that we can't move as it stands. And it's kind of an important one, I think. And it's this, like we have to pay rent to stay here where we are. And as it stands now, that number isn't quite negotiable. We're up for lease renewal in a year and a half, so we'll kind of see where we're at then. But I don't know. This is a pretty sweet space. And we're not the space, obviously. But out of, looking around the beach, out of all the different places we could occupy, it's a pretty cool one to have found ourselves in. And it's one that I think we wouldn't mind, staying in if that's how it works out. And so I'm hoping that it does. I'm praying that it does. And if it does, it will be because we're all giving. And so it's a community thing, like in the purest and truest sense. We're here because we're giving. And so this is an invitation to give as you can. So, yeah, thank us sincerely. And questions?
Can we get that sweet roll palm sound?
I think it's probably buried under the current facade, so we could look, yeah. One day my brother did, I don't remember what he was doing, but he had to get up. He got his head up in the drop ceiling there for something in the lobby, way out in the lobby. And he was like, dude, he came back down. He's like, there's windows. There's windows up there. Like all of that window that you see there it's still up there. It's just there's a drop ceiling that separates it. So, we got options. All right. Well, I'm going to pray, and then we'll move into the talk for this morning. The Holy Spirit, we acknowledge you here. And we pause to reorient, to ask for the grace to be grounded in the deepest part of who we are. In this place where we experience a peace that passes understanding, rest, the experience of being known by you and also knowing you. And I just ask now that for the remainder of the time that we have together, whatever words are shared and whatever is heard and received would come from and arrive to that same place, a place of union. And we thank you, Jesus, for being the way, for opening this reality up to us, for inviting us into it. And we just want to say, yes to the invitation. Amen. All right, so we are going to continue here in our Signs and Wonder series. And a couple weeks back, we talked about love was the word that we were looking at. And this morning's message will in some ways be a continuation of a couple weeks back with an emphasis on fear. Where does love and fear, where do they intersect? And so I'll begin by reading just a quote and a couple of scriptures, and we won't be in a hurry to get through these. And I'll just invite us to do as we've been doing. Just pay attention to what you notice. You don't have to take in the whole thing. You don't have to connect all the dots. But just notice where the life is for you and stay with that. The first quote is from Albert Einstein. And he said, "The most important decision that we make is whether we believe that we live in a friendly or a hostile universe." And this is 1 Peter 5. Peter says, "Be content with who you are. Be content with who you actually are. Don't put on airs. God's strong hand is on you. He'll promote you at the right time. So live carefree before God, because he is most careful with you." And this is 2 Corinthians 6. "I will be a father to you, and you will be my sons and my daughters, says the Lord Almighty." Just came back last night from Cape Coral down near Fort Myers. There was a vineyard conference that Andrew and I attended. You guys know the Vineyard is like a movement of churches. It isn't like, it's not just us. And we're part of a little region, which there's about 100 churches. We just got rezoned, so our region now goes from the Houston area all the way to Puerto Rico. So we're the Gulf Coast region. So if your friends are asking you, what region are you guys in over there at Beach's Vineyard? You can tell them Gulf Coast region. Probably get asked that a lot. And it was a good time. It was good to be connected there. But one thing that happened on the way there and on the way back, and this is like, this is in the form of confession, and also maybe you can pray for me. I've recognized this for a long time, but I would be a much happier person if I could somehow muster up the self-control, the self-discipline to stop reading the billboards along the highways. Like this, I don't know what's wrong with my eyes, but they are obsessed with taking in all the information on these billboards, even though that it's just almost universally depressing, And one thing I noticed, and this is kind of embarrassing, one time this Canadian guy, Gary Best, came down and taught here on a Sunday, and he drove down from Canada, and he said that he noticed when he crossed the state line into Florida, all the billboards became lawyer ads. So, not like lawyers, they're the ones that are like, did the dog bite you? Then we'll take all their stuff. We can get his fur. We're going to go get his fur for you. And so, we're rolling down the interstate, and there's 650 square feet. That's how big billboards are, all right? They're huge, and so the vast majority of them are guys, these like lawyer bros, and they're rolling up their sleeves, and they're saying, "You hurt, we hit," or whatever their like comments are. You've been injured, we'll injure them. Like, this is not healthy for my soul, and I can't stop reading them. So, this did cause me to start asking some questions, kind of who signed off on this? Because it's an otherwise just a lovely landscape, Florida. It's a beautiful place. There's something like 8 million people are moving here every week or something, I hear. And this is in spite of the billboards. So I'm asking, who signed off on this? And in some way we did, we signed off on this. There is not, an inductive Bible study, right? I've been schooled in the inductive Bible study method, and what you're taught is to pay attention to repeated phrases and sayings because they reflect the deeply held beliefs of the culture at the time something was written, and also the author's intent and communication. So if we have somehow signed off on this many lawyer bros promising to punch back, then it must communicate for us. There's some kind of an icon. There's some sort of a representation for all of us for some collective understanding of what justice is. And so what is that? What is that communal belief about justice? Justice is what? How would you say it? Revenge. Totally. Revenge. Retribution. Getting even. And, obviously, on some level, it makes sense. We'll get there. But this idea of somebody else deserving something for something they've done, or me deserving something as a result of something that happened to me, and this whole like deserving thing, you know how deserving ultimately pans out? The more things you sense you deserve, generally the happier you are, right? Isn't that the... I've always thought that, man. Get what you deserve. Whenever the ad says that, I think, oh God, I know I don't want that. All right, so that's happened, and there's only one other billboard theme, at least that I noticed, that rivals in sheer volume the lawyer bros. And do you know what that billboard theme is? What do you guys think? What's it? Buc-ee's? It's Buc-ee's, yes. And I want to talk about beavers now for a little while. No, I will probably, now that you mention it. But the other one that I noticed, and maybe this is just because of my vocation, this is like a problem, is that it's hell. There are so many billboards about hell. It's kind of shocking, you know. There's this one, like, when you die, this one, when you die, you will meet God. And then there's this flat line. And it's so ominous, you know. It's so menacing. It isn't like, you know, it's hard to read it like, when you die, you'll meet God. Or like, God is with you today. I saw one of them said, eternity is a long time to burn in hell. Which I don't know that concept of eternity holds up. I don't know how eternity and time go together, but it doesn't seem like it's time unending. I read Buechner one time said, like, if you have a color wheel and you spin the color wheel, if you spin it fast enough, all the colors turn into one color. And he said eternity is like that. It's time spun at a rate that it's all. Eternity is a long time to burn in hell. And various other ones. One time I saw one that said, stop, drop, and roll won't work in hell. Which I feel like I have to tell, if there's kids listening, it's like earmuffs. But the Bible talks about hell, you know, and so I don't want to totally soft sell it here. And I do want to mention that these statements on hell are also statements concerning justice. It's the same theme, and the concern of these billboards is, you know, are the ones people who wrote them is different in scope than the lawyer bros. But the themes nonetheless seem to carry the same kind of like emotional signature. It seems like they're coming from the same place and arriving in the same place. And what would you call that place? Who's signing the checks on these? It feels like fear. It feels like fear. And another billboard I read said, hell is real. And this is where I want to make this point. I, right now, am not interested in making any argument against the truth of that statement, that hell is real. Right? So if you feel nervous, that's where I'm going. That's not at all where I'm going. Jesus talked about hell pretty regularly. Enough so that it can't really just be dismissed as, oh, that sounds not cool. You know, God is love. Tell me something happy. Jesus talked about hell fairly regularly. I would say most of us, all of us, have had some experience of hell. And nearly every religion has some concept of hell. It isn't specific to Christianity. It's called different things in different places, but it all seems to be connected to the principle of cause and effect, meaning that our choices have consequences. Like the things that we decide, they have to matter. There has to be some significance to our actions. And most obviously, our actions, the things that we do, the way that we treat each other, it has consequences, immediate consequences, because we have the autonomy, the ability, the freedom, the power to increase the amount of suffering experienced by ourselves and others, or decrease it based on how we act and how we treat ourselves and each other. Also, our beliefs, there must be some consequence to what we believe, because most of us have lived long enough to have some beliefs like shift. And you found out that the thing that you thought was unmovable and the ground of your experience of reality, the thing that was making you a decent human being, you're not anchored there anymore. And then there's this realization that, like, God is still with me. And I'm still being led, moved. And so what we believe matters. They say, somebody shared a study with me one time that our concept of God is the most important thing about us, the way we think about God, because that, more than anything else, shapes the way that we behave and act in this world. And so if our concept of God is as primarily like a punishing judge, then we kind of root for people to get what they deserve. And if our concept or our belief about God is that he is merciful, long-suffering, patient, our behavior tends to reflect that belief. So what we believe is important. This is the principle of cause and effect, and it's obviously true. It's been said that the opposite of love is not hate. That the opposite of love is fear. Heard this? And so when love is our cause, when love is the place that we're coming from, our operative mode, generally speaking, we're open and peaceable and we're concerned for others. We're kind of outside of our own myopic view. When we're coming from love, love draws us outside of ourselves and to the other. And generally speaking, when we're operating from a place of love, what we experience, not always, but what we experience is harmony. Even if we can't make sense of what's happening, something in us says it's going to be okay. And I love this person, whether it's somebody that I like also or not. There's harmony. But when we're dominated by fear, how we often feel is like hidden. You just want to hide from it all, and closed off. I got no room for anything more. Defensive, or cowering. And all of that is self-protection in various disguises. You're just afraid you're going to lose the rest of it. And the vibe, when our cause is fear, the vibe that we experience is, the effect is paranoia, I think. It's paranoia, which interestingly, it's Greek. Para means alongside, and noia means mind. So it means with the mind fused, stuck in my head. And with paranoia stuck in our head, what the experience is separation and isolation. We don't feel that sense of connection and that hope that everything's going to be all right, like that we're still being moved. There's separation and isolation. And I think a case could be made that hell, when we're talking about hell, what we're talking about is the experience of separation and isolation in its absolute form. So cause and effect, it's a law, and it governs our human affairs, and Jesus talked about it often, and it forms the basis of the golden rule, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. It's what Jesus means when he says, to the same measure that you judge others, they're going to judge you right back. Sometimes we read that like that's God is going to judge you, but it's all that whole context of those statements is about human affairs. It's like, yeah, sure, go ahead and talk about them and see how they feel about you, whether they ever hear about it or not. It's like it happens out there. Lee Brookins, who founded Beach's Vineyard, he was so serious about if you were going to teach on a Sunday, he would make it explicitly clear that you are not allowed to use comparative language. You must purge comparative language. You can't say, the church up the road does it like this, but I'll tell you how we do it over here. Even if you don't come straight at the other church, you're just kind of in a roundabout way. Like, thank God we're us and not them. He's like, because if you think sowing that into a group of people the snake isn't going to eat that tail, It's not very collaborative. Right. It's a little isolating. And it's the
We're all in the same body.
Yeah. But you know what it is it's the easiest way to form community. It's the cheapest way to give a sense of group identity. And we're not doing it like that. See how sneaky it is? So the law, cause and effect, it governs our human affairs. But the scriptures also describe something like a divine governance. It's like another operating system that transcends, that includes the law of cause and effect. But this divine governance, it doesn't seem to operate at all like human affairs. This is John 1:16. It's so beautiful. Out of his fullness, we have all received grace in place of grace, in place of grace, in place of grace. And it's already given. So divine governance is love expressed as grace. And from this perspective, in this governance, justice is not enacted through revenge or retribution, but through restoration. And not through exclusion, but through uniting. Not through control, but by surrender. Thinking about this all week, I was thinking about isolation and how, I mean, that's sort of the go-to move from, like, you know, when you're the toddler goes in timeout, and then the middle schooler goes to detention, and then the young adult goes to prison, and then the one who can't function in prison goes to solitary confinement, and ultimately you go to hell. You know, this like, it's a continuum of isolation. And the picture that the scriptures give over and over, and who we follow, right? Who we follow, Jesus, like the model is self-surrender. The surrender of control. The self-giving love. When you read the Passion, you know, like Jesus' last few days there, and he's being dragged in front of all these courtrooms. I remember reading this a couple years back and just having this realization, like the only person who has any measure of control, i.e. sanity, in these affairs is Jesus. And he's the only one who's, you know, he's the prisoner. But he says, nope, you can't take my life from me. I'll give it to you. I lay it down. And this is the kind of freedom that we're made from and made for, and that we long for, and that also terrifies us, does it not? And so I'm just with this like hermeneutics of Florida billboards. All I'm trying to say is, you know, both things are a reality, and I just fear that for like a Christian nation, that we might be a little out of balance. Because I didn't see a single billboard that read, injured, forgive them and be healed. Or, I like this one, hurt, hug back. He's rolling up his sleeves for it. You know. This is what Jesus said. He said, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That's Old Testament law. So at least the punishment fits the crime, okay? And he's like, that's okay, but also I tell you this, don't resist an evil person. What? If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. If anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand your coat over as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you. Do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. Oh, man. Love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. Like, who's signing that check? If I'm going to live that way, you know, who's funding that? Because that sounds like a one-way ticket to, you know, being the world's doormat. Well, he tells us, he says, very next verse, be children. Be who you are. Be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and he sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous, which is another way to say, stop thinking about it. Stop measuring and comparing and metering out and determining worthiness. And I don't know about that. And what if this person going to spend it on? And what if they ask me again? What if I say yes today and then tomorrow they ask me again? How do you know what's going to happen tomorrow? Do you know? Did you figure it out? Like, how accurate are your prophecies generally? He says, stop trying to figure it out. And instead, just be who you are. You're like, well, that's Jesus. He's the Son of God. But then he said, okay, but when you pray, disciples, pray like this. Our Father. This is radical inclusion. He didn't say, when you pray, pray like this. Jesus' Father. Sometimes Father's Abba, and it means something like Dada. It's a tremendous risk to be a child because you kind of have to go where your parents take you. And a lot of times you're just hoping that they're taking you somewhere good or you don't even know where you're going. And Jesus is like, be like that. I remember a quote from Thomas Merton I read a long time ago where he said, it was just in a letter he wrote to a friend, he's like, I'm blown down the street like leaves scattered in all directions. Is this even a life? But what's being described here is freedom. This is 1 John. And this is a pretty bold statement. He's like, look, now, for those of you who believe, surrendered, you're already a child of God. And what we will be, we don't even know. But we do know that when Christ appears, we shall be like him, for we'll see him as he is. Now, statements like these, they function as an invitation to allow divine governance, grace, mercy, and love, not to remain in the realm of wishful thinking or abstract theology, but or maybe the way that God relates to me, hopefully, but maybe not because the billboards don't make it sound like that. Like, these statements invite divine governance to become the way that we learn to function in our human affairs in the realm of cause and effect, where really that guy's getting what he deserves, and what does it have to do with me anyway? And the way that this happens, the only way that this can happen is to be parented by God. That the New Testament just keeps, that's the invitation. To be parented by God, which is to see God as God is. And what is God like? Well, 1 John 4 says that God is love. God is love. And there's no fear in love. In fact, perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. And so if you're afraid, all that means is that love is not perfect in you at the moment. And of course, we come in and out of love and fear. Moments of great courage where you're just like, how am I still here? And then other moments where you're like, well, you ask the same question, but it's more like, how am I still here? Jeez. So there's no fear in love, and God is love, and so it's an open and shut case. God is love. There's no fear in love. Fear has no place in our spiritual development. If anybody comes at you with fear, or if you're experiencing fear, that just comes from the bad guy. Fear, bad. Love, good. Next topic. Except except the Bible, which it just harasses me all the time. Because I like to reduce things to simple things and then go for a bike ride. But then the Bible comes around and it keeps harassing us, and it tells me things like, the whole Old Testament talks about fearing the Lord, bro. Get up there and tell those people that there's no fear and love and that there's nothing to be afraid of. Go ahead, man. What would Jonathan Edwards, one of those guys, said that he preached every sermon with his knees knocking together, not because he was afraid of public perception, but because he was afraid of God. Jess used to always tell me this. She's like, you people are crazy. You're going to get up and talk about infinite mystery, like you know anything.
Dirt talking to dirt about God.
Dirt talking to dirt about God. Yes, the Bible, the Old Testament in particular, but also the New Testament, just keeps saying things like this. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. It's the root, the foundation of wisdom. Fear is the foundation? Knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. It's all over the place. The Hebrew word for fear is yirah, and it includes the concepts of trembling, like our friend's knees, also wonder, like being overwhelmed by some vast vista, you just, oh my, wonder, mystery, pretty much anything that makes you be quiet. Gratitude, admiration. It's why people go to the mountains and why people drive to the ocean, because every now and then you just have to be reminded that you're pretty small. And the root word here in Hebrew is ra'ah. Yirah is a 4-letter word. Fear is a 4-letter word. Thought that was a little pun for you. The root word, 3 of the 4 letters make up the Hebrew word for sight. To see, to perceive. The oldest book in the Hebrew Scriptures, the first of the wisdom literature in the Hebrew Bible, is Job. And it's a master class on how the concepts of fear and truly seeing intersect. And after having this experience of the absolute highs, like the best, the great human experience, and then the total, devastating lows, Job begins to ask the questions that have no answers, like, why? Why? My oldest son goes almost immediately here. You're like, bro, I don't know if that's the best way to handle that. And he's like, why? And you're like, well, because there's just other ways to do it without, making your brother cry. And he's like, that's dumb. And why do people even, I don't even like we'll be playing football, and I'll be like, if that's a good idea. And then he's like, why is there even such a game as football? He goes straight to nihilism. He goes from happy-go-lucky to nihilism in no time. But we all get there, we all get there eventually, where you're just like, what is this? Why? Why any of it? Why even the happiness? It doesn't stick around. Why? And Job starts asking these questions, and God gives him a crystal clear explanation that explains it completely, reasonably, and logically, and sets once and for all to bed the question of why. He basically, he doesn't do that at all. He just takes him for a virtual tour of the universe, and he's like, look at that thing, I made that, what'd you do? And after seeing all this, Job comes to the only conclusion that actually brings any peace about these kind of questions, which is this: I'm insignificant. What can I say in response to you? I'm just going to be quiet for a minute. And then he says this: I'd heard about you, but now I've actually seen you. And so I repent, dust and ashes. There's a classic Hebrew tale that says that every person should go through life with 2 notes. You heard this one? One in each pocket. In one pocket, a note that reads, I am but dust and ashes. And in the other pocket, a note that reads, and for my sake, this world was created. And that's the mystery. To be a child of God, to follow Jesus, is in some ways to walk along a path that doesn't offer resolution, but offers a form of peace that goes around the part of us that thinks we need the answer. And it takes humility and time to accept this, in my case. So I'm going to close with this classical Hebrew teaching on the fear of the Lord. It says that there are 3 stages of yirah, of this fear. And the first stage is the fear of punishment. And this is the fear of unpleasant consequences to the behavior. This is the type of wisdom that we can train like parrots and cats to understand. You know, it's like, this is the, like, if I put my hand on the hot stove, it burns me, and I don't like how that feels, and I probably don't need to learn this too many times. This is the fear of punishment. It's the first stage, and it's helpful, obviously, you know. I don't like getting burnt. The second stage is this anxiety about keeping the rules. And this is where we've come into the realization that there are better ways to live and that God might have written some of the better ways to live. And then also, if I want to belong to the community that's welcomed me, I kind of have to learn what the rules are and then play by them, whether that's family, school, religion. And the problem with the second stage is that it's marked by anxiety. It doesn't actually bring much peace. Right in the beginning, it brings peace, and then there comes the realization, like, I don't think I can actually do this. Are all those people actually doing this? And there's a concern that we'll violate God's law, and this is, again, it's probably where a lot of really, really good things have come from, things that have reduced suffering in tremendous ways, comes out of this fear that this is probably what God wants for me. It's where we learn to surrender destructive vices, where we reorient our belief systems, but it's still rooted in the law of cause and effect in human affairs. Now, the third stage they call a profound reverence for life. And this comes from true seeing. It's the kind of true seeing that comes often, we can't find it if we go looking for it. It often comes to us. And most often it seems it comes in the form of love, like love, where the floor just drops out from under you and you have to reckon with your own inability to be the kind of person that you know you want to be, to answer love's demands, love, and also suffering. When you get smushed good enough that you can't stage your own comeback. And you can't rush through this process any more than you can make it happen. But what does begin to crystallize is that fearing in this way, reverence, and seeing the way we welcome the world begins to become the same thing. And I've learned so much of this from Jess, from my what is this time that we're wasting? There's no time to waste anymore on being dominated by anxiety or control methods or distractions or wishful thinking or unexamined assumptions. Like, there isn't time. I turned 40 this week. It might have something to do with that too. An old girl at a thrift store this week said, "You guys should come back. It's nice to have young people in here." And I was like, all right. I love South Florida. This is what Paul said. You know Paul, you know this guy, you know his story a little bit? Like, kind of into the rules. Tried to fulfill all the old ones, made a lot of the new ones. That guy, Paul, this is what he says. If you're led by the Spirit, you're not under the law. If you're led by the Spirit, you're not under the law. Well, don't tell them that. They're going to go crazy. They're going to do whatever they want. Humans are bad foundationally bad. And if we tell them that there's no law to govern them, it's, we all had to read Lord of the Flies in high school, right?
That's why we need those lawyers.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing. And this is the last point I want to make. He says for the third time, but I mostly mean it. We'll see. The third stage of the fear of the Lord, this one of reverent awe, of not being controlled by anxiety or fear, is not the highest or the one that you're aspiring to. They all interrelate and everything belongs. It's a helpful framework because it is so natural to stall out in stage 1 or 2 because it feels a lot better than where you were. And many of the systems that invited us in can become the biggest barrier to being governed, to actually allowing us to go where it is that we're meant to be who it is we're meant to be. Do you see? They're helpful systems. They are. But what the system begins to sense, this is Jesus' story, is like, like, if he doesn't need us anymore and he's telling them that they don't either, we won't. That's, self-preservation starts to kick in. And the thing that supports us and cares for us and loves us can become a barrier to allowing us to actually become who it is that we're meant to be. And this is not meant to be a critique. It's an observation. I'm the pastor of a church. I like systems. There's this old skit. This is a deep pull, all right? It's an SNL skit. It's got Will Ferrell in it, and I'm hoping some of you remember it, where he and this lady are co-hosts of this sort of like banal morning show, called like Wake Up and Smile or something. And they've got a teleprompter, and they're having this, like, the most boring, wasn't that interesting what happened there yesterday when the Cardinals landed in the yard? Oh, it sure was, Ted. And they're having this just, kind of like happy, and then the teleprompter malfunctions. Do you remember the skit? And they start to panic because they don't know what line to say next. And soon, within minutes, it just descends into, like, abject terror because they can't get the teleprompter to come back up. And then Will Ferrell and the weatherman or somebody end up in a fight over who will be the lord of this new teleprompter-less world. It's like without the thing to lead the conversation, it just goes savage. This is a great skit, but it reminded me that in many ways, and from a lot of different avenues, including hilarious SNL skits, we're sort of trained to fear freedom. And I think that the place where love and fear intersect, if we're going to resolve our initial question here, I think the place where love and fear intersect is that in love, in real love, what quickly becomes apparent is that if this is going to be what I sense it's meant to be, it is going to cost me everything. I can't hold back. I can't. I mean, I can, but I don't want to. And I think this is the core of Jesus' entire teaching, which is to genuinely love is to lose yourself. And that in losing yourself, you somehow mysteriously find yourself. We talk about love in our culture, we use this expression, falling in love. In what other context, besides skydiving maybe, is falling presented as like a positive experience? You don't want to fall. I fall all the time, man. I tripped on a dog bowl last night and almost wiped out meeting my niece for the first time. Falling is generally not a positive experience because falling is the loss of control. And when we fall in love, we can tell this is what's happening, not just romantic love, but truly giving ourselves to something bigger than us. It circumvents reason and our justifications and our denial and our resistance and all our other control methods. And in the experience of being lost, like I wish it was always like the zone, where you're just like MJ's become one with the basketball court. Total dominance. But there have been times when I felt it, this surrender, and I can't, in prayer, with Jess, with my kids, with the work sometimes. There have been times when I've felt it, and I can't even tell if I like it or if I want it. But I know I have to give myself to it. Love, in some ways, is the loss of our preferences. And so to fear God is to fear love. God is love. And to fear God, this also means in some way to fear love. And that somehow the fear of love is the beginning of wisdom. And this is to recognize that we are possibly more afraid of love because of what it will cost us than we are of punishment. Possibly. And this recognition is the beginning of wisdom. It's not the end of wisdom. It's not the end of the journey. It's not the arrival, but it's a place of seeing that's more honest. And we'll end there. And we'll end with the question, where's the surrender for you now? Like right now, not the big existential ones, like if only I could learn to pray, not like you don't have to go way out. But just right now, as you sit and reflect, where's the point of surrender for you? And so, Katie, if you want to come up and play, we have a few minutes here to sit. We'll open up the communion tables. You're welcome to come and receive the elements. You're free to use this time however you want. If you got kids here, it'd be nice if in about 5 minutes you went and picked them up. 5 to 8, 5 to 8 minute range. But we'll officially be dismissed here, but we will hold the space together. And you're welcome to stay for as long as you'd like. So be at peace.